Under the paint of this painting, there are dots, rows of them, running along every outline, 400 years old, invisible until an infrared camera looks through the surface. They are the fingerprints of a machine, a workshop that took one man's paintings and multiplied them. This one snow scene survives in more than 100 copies. So who pressed the dots into the panel? Why did a family spend 50 years copying a dead man's pictures they could barely see? And what happened when the cameras were turned on the dead man himself? Winter Landscape with a Bird Trap, Pieter Bruegel the Elder, 1565. This is the story of the Bruegel Copy Factory. Start with the painting itself. A village under snow, a frozen river, and on it, skaters, small and dark, playing on the ice. And in the corner, the thing the picture is named for, a wooden board propped on a stick, and the birds gathering under it, a trap. Now hold that image, because here it is again, and again. Vienna, dated 1601, Stockholm, Sibiu, dated 1631, Prague, Tokyo. At least 128 versions of this one composition survive, and most of them came out of a single workshop, each the same, down to the branches against the sky, each slightly, stubbornly different. Here is the other number. Of everything Pieter Bruegel the Elder painted, about 45 authenticated paintings survive in the world, and within a generation of his death, the emperor in Prague was buying every one he could find. So the originals were gone, into palaces. And Bruegel never copied himself. Every authentic work he left is a unique object. More copies of one snow scene than originals of everything. Somebody built a machine. The question is, who, and out of what? This is Antwerp, drawn in Bruegel's own century, the busiest port in Northern Europe. A saying about the place survives. In Antwerp, it is always market day. And one of the things Antwerp sold, in bulk, was pictures. Historians who have worked through the records estimate the city and its neighbour Mechelen were turning out well over 10,000 paintings a year between them. Panels made for export, like cloth, like grain. And the workshops that made them had methods to match. Serial production, tracing, pouncing, ways of repeating a good design without drawing it again. None of that was a scandal. It was the trade, the way the city worked, long before Bruegel and long after him. But in this city of copyists, one workshop was different. Its product was not a popular design. It was a dead man's imagination. This is the dead man. Pieter Bruegel the Elder, in an engraving made 3 years after his death. He died in Brussels in 1569 and was buried in the church where he had married. He left 2 sons, Peter, not yet 5 years old, Jan, an infant. Think about what that means. The boys grew up as the paintings left, sold, collected, carried off to the villas of Antwerp and Brussels, and then to Prague, where Emperor Rudolf II was gathering them. The famous father was everywhere. His actual pictures were nowhere a child could study them. What stayed behind was a household of women and a stack of drawings. The boy's grandmother, Maiken Verhulst, was a trained painter herself, and it was probably she who first taught them. And she kept the working drawings from her son-in-law's shop, full-size preparatory sheets, the cartoons, the templates a workshop uses to move a design onto a panel. That was the inheritance, not the paintings, the drawings and the name. What does a boy do with that when he grows up needing a living? Here is the answer, and the proof runs right under its surface. The battle between Carnival and Lent. Not the father's original, the son's copy in Brussels, one of at least 5 full-scale copies his workshop made of this one design. When conservation scientists in Belgium looked at it through infrared, the underdrawing appeared, and beside the drawn lines, rows of dots. This is how they got there. You take the full-size cartoon, you prick its outlines with a needle, hole after hole. You lay it on the prepared panel and you pounce it, pressing chalk dust through the holes. Lift the sheet away and the design waits there as a line of dots, ready to be joined, then painted over. The dots were never meant to be seen. The paint was their hiding place, and infrared took it away. And there is one more thing in the scans. The same dots appear in a full-scale version by the younger brother, Jan. The brothers were sharing the sheets. The inheritance was a working tool, in use, passed across the family table. It was a trade, and mostly an anonymous one. On one copy of the snow scene, the maker signed the family name in full, and then hid his own, in white paint, on a snowy branch. A tribute painter, working under a bigger name. The dots, the sheets, the borrowed name, that is the factory flaw. But a tracing needs a master sheet, and the master sheets raise a harder question. Whose hand drew? Hold that question, because science had 2 more witnesses to call. The first is the panel itself. These pictures are painted on oak, and oak is made of years. Count the rings at a board's edge, and you can date the tree's felling, and paint cannot be older than its board. In the Bruegel copies, the gap between the felling of the wood and the date on the paint runs from about 13 years to nearly 30, and the method referees the hard cases. One supposed workshop panel turned out to be, on the evidence of its own wood, very unlikely to have come from the studio at all. The son's dated panels begin only in the 1580s, a decade and more after his father was buried. The wood keeps the family's timeline honest. And once, the wood caught someone much later. One panel carries an added board, and on that board, a green pigment that did not exist before the mid-1800s. The tree it came from was felled around the 1870s. 3 centuries on, someone was still quietly completing a Bruegel. The copying never really stopped, and neither did the detection. The second witness needs no camera at all. This is a large, coloured drawing of a painting we have not properly seen yet, a giantess striding towards the mouth of hell. For a long time, people hoped this sheet was by Bruegel's own hand. Hold the paper to the light. Pressed into the sheet is a papermaker's watermark from the workshop of Niklaus Häusler of Basel, and Häusler's paper dates from 1578 at the earliest. Bruegel died in 1569. The paper convicts the drawing. It is a copy, made at least 9 years after the man was buried, by a hand nobody has ever named. And then the story turns over. Because the convicted copy turned out to be precious. Its colours are still bright where the paintings have faded. The blue of her skirt, the white of her veil. What the original has lost across 4 centuries survives on this sheet. Keep that idea. A copy can remember what an original forgets. And keep the giantess. The film ends with her. Step back from the copies for a moment, because this is where the whole story turns round. This is the father's own hand. Netherlandish proverbs painted in 1559. A village acting out over 100 sayings at once. His son's workshop copied this design again and again, and that gave scholars an experiment. Put the original beside the copies. Look through all of them with the same infrared eyes down to the underdrawings. If the son was tracing and the father was inventing, the drawings underneath should tell them apart. They did not. Beneath the surfaces, the underdrawings agree more closely than the finished paintings do, and the best explanation scholars have found is this. The father was working from a full-size cartoon too. Let that settle. Bruegel the elder never repeated a composition, but the method his son's factory ran on, the sheets, the transfer, the design, carried complete onto the panel, appears to have been his own studio practice, in a city where that craft was every workshop's daily bread. The son did not corrupt the father's way of working. He inherited it. The factory was the studio, carried on without its master. Which leaves one last instrument, and the painting that lost its maker's name. One more thing the copies quietly did. This is the massacre of the innocents. Soldiers in armour fill a snowbound village, families plead. And look at what the soldiers are seizing. Geese, bundles, a goat. The grief in the faces does not match the plunder, because this is not what Bruegel painted. An early owner, possibly the emperor himself, had the children painted out, one by one, into parcels and animals. The son's copy still shows the scene the father intended. When books need to show what this painting once was, it is the copy they print. Sometimes the copy is the only witness left. Now the giantess, Dulle Griet, Mad Meg. A woman in armour striding towards the mouth of hell, out of an old Flemish saying about the woman who could plunder in front of hell and come back unscathed. In 1894, she surfaced at an auction in Cologne, and the catalogue shows what 3 centuries of the family machine had done. The entry reads, ascribed to Pieter Bruegel the Younger, hellish Bruegel. The father's giantess wearing the son's name. A collector named Fritz Meyer van den Berg bought her anyway, and she hangs today in his house in Antwerp. Then, only a few years ago, the machine that catches copies was pointed at her. Conservators moved an X-ray scanner across the panel, millimetre by millimetre, for days. Just over 10 million data points, mapping the elements inside the paint. And with the cleaning that followed, there it was, the signature, and the true date, 1563. Bruegel. The wrong name lifted off her at last. More than half of everything Bruegel painted has now been examined this way, and one museum has put its scans online, free for anyone. You can go under the paint yourself tonight. So come back one last time to the Wall of Snow. 128 winters, from a workshop run by a man who was not yet 5 when his father died. The copies scattered the family name until even the father's own panels wore it wrongly. And the copies kept the designs alive while the originals vanished into palaces, were painted over, faded. The same instruments that exposed them are the instruments that needed them. So look at the snow scene once more and answer for yourself. Painted from his father's own sheet, in his father's own method, under the family name. What more would it need before you would call it a real Bruegel?